How do you want your admissions officer to remember you? The more memorable you are, the more likely you are to get into your dream school. I'm Hillary, and I've helped students write phenomenal essays that got them into schools like Cornell and UC Berkeley. The college essay, also known as the narrative, essay, or the personal statement, is a story about your experiences and who you have become through them. The standard structure that I'm going to talk about today is typically called the 3-act story structure or the hero's journey. There are 6 sections to the hero's journey, beginning with the hook. This is the beginning of your essay, usually only a few sentences. It's called the hook because it catches your reader like a fish hook. Of course, to grab your reader efficiently, it has to be extremely engaging. Your admissions officer is reading through hundreds of application essays, and you may only have a few moments to capture their attention and pull them into your story. You can do this through a surprising statement, a story, or a question. Here's an example. A whispering voice, tapping fingers, the crinkling of wrapping paper, the crackle of breaking eggshells. The sounds induce a tingly feeling like static electricity from my scalp to my spine. As you can see, this essay begins with a story, a moment of listening to ASMR. There are a few prohibited college essay topics. Leave your ideas down below if you'd like me to take a look. But in general, most topics are okay as long as they show your passion, along with other personal values. If you don't know what to write about, stay tuned for next month because in March, I'm going to do a college essay write-along series, beginning with brainstorming and going through one section of the essay each week. This brings us to part 2. The status quo is a few sentences explaining to your reader what life was like before your hook. It answers the question, how did we get here? Often it's a flashback moment like this. I used to suffer from insomnia. Oftentimes, I found myself staring at the same white ceiling until the bluish-black mask of night transitioned into a shade of muddy yellow. One night, as I lay awake, I turned to the internet. I mindlessly wandered until I discovered the soft whispers and affirmative phrases of ASMR comfort audios, a mix of sleep-inducing auditory stimuli and comforting fictional scenarios. As I listened to the repetitive noises and faceless voice, the video tickled my ears and created a safe haven for the vulnerable child inside me. To cry is to be weak, and to be a girl is a sin. As I listened to the comfort audio, the harsh voices of my grandparents echoed in my ears. Growing up in a traditional intergenerational Chinese-American household, I was often blamed for my gender and felt a lack of emotional support and validation. Turning to the internet, I searched for ways to cry less. I learned to look up at the ceiling and pinch my index finger to restrain tears from trickling down my flustered cheeks. I cried less, but I had trouble sleeping, and I would often conjure thoughts of self-harm. Moving smoothly into part 3, we have the inciting incident. This is the catalyst to your change. What's your change? Well, every personal statement should talk about your personal internal change. If you look through the Common App prompts or this one on Apply Texas, they all want to know about your personal internal growth through the experiences you're writing about. This inciting incident pushes the protagonist out of her comfort zone, and she encounters internal conflict, which moves her toward personal growth. It might go like this. Listening to the ASMR comfort audios helped me realize I could use the internet to express my emotions rather than suppress them. I began making my own comfort audios, channeling frustrations from my own life into scripts. In my most popular video, a vase smashes and my voice soothes the listener through soft shushing and whispers that my concern is not for the vase, but them. My voice breaks until the cries of affirmation turn into real sobs. The video received over 200,000 views, with floods of commenters saying the video helped them process their own experiences with bullying, abuse, and self-harm. Listening to this brought me to tears, one commenter wrote. The emotion in your voice was riveting. Part 4, raising the stakes. Also known as the rising action of your essay, here your internal development should move you through your problem and change your direction. Here, the protagonist moves even farther outside of her comfort zone, and her vulnerability could cause her to be even more hurt. Not only does this show her willingness to do difficult things, which is a beneficial quality in a college applicant, but it engages the reader by making them worry about the protagonist and fall deeper into your story. Seeing the impact of my vulnerability gave me the courage to share my emotions with the people around me. I started slowly sharing news articles about stress-induced harm in younger adults with my parents on the Chinese communication platform WeChat. Then one night, as I helped my mother with dinner, I finally let out the torment of the words of my grandparents. My mother listened all the way through without any interruptions until I slumped down onto the floor, and she held me in her arms until the kettle squealed. "I have always been proud of you, my daughter," she whispered gently in my ear as my tears soaked in her blouse. Part 5 of your essay is your climax, the completion of your internal shift. It might seem like the big part of the essay we're reading has already happened. She's already reconnected with her mother. But the climax here is actually when the protagonist puts what she's learned through her experience into practice. By putting what she's learned into action to help the rest of her family, she shows what she has learned and how she can share that knowledge. The climax of your essay should be the moment we see how far you have come through the experience that you're writing about. After dinner, I proposed weekly family nights where we could openly share our thoughts and connect over board games. The next week, my siblings grabbed Monopoly from the cabinet, and we sat around the table while my younger brother sat on my mother's lap. During the game, my father talked about work, my sister and I talked about school, and then the conversation spiraled from the money-centered game to discussions on rising inflation rates and the effect on mental health. Through these family nights, we combined the traditional Asian value of family with the Western value of open communication about emotions. Part 6, the outcome. This is your new status quo, what life is like for you now that you've grown through your experience. This should also show your reader why your story matters. It should answer the question, so what? This student makes me care about her story by saying, "On my YouTube channel, I was applauded by hundreds of thousands of strangers for crying in front of the camera. But more importantly, I learned to be vulnerable when my environment taught me it was weakness. A faceless voice once taught me not to be afraid of speaking up, and no longer should individuals of any race, color, or gender be forced to hide their voices. Our voices change lives, bring back life, save lives." Your reader may see a well-written story, but without telling them why it matters, it won't be memorable to them, and they won't remember you. For your narrative or personal statement to stick with the admissions committee, show them why they should care. How do you think the admissions committee would remember this student? I think they'll remember a surprising and beautiful essay by a student who cares deeply for others because of her own experiences.